I'd like unanimous consent to engage in a colloquy with my colleagues from Georgia.
Without objection.
Okay, thank you. This is about Dr. Ernie Moniz's appointment to be Secretary of Energy. I put a hold on Dr. Moniz, not because anything to do with him. He's a wonderful fellow, MIT professor. He's been intimately associated with the Department of Energy, including the MOX program, and all of us in Georgia and South Carolina look forward to working with him. What we've been upset about is that the Obama administration's decision to stop construction temporarily of the MOX facility. It's about 60% complete. What is MOX? It is a program to take 34 metric tons of weapons-grade plutonium in excess of our defense needs and dispose of it by turning it into commercial-grade fuel. It is enough weapons-grade plutonium to make 17,000 warheads. And in 2000, there was an agreement between the United States and Russia. They would dispose of 34 metric tons. We would dispose of 34 metric tons. And we've been studying how to do that. And in 2010, the federal government, the Obama administration, in the agreement with the Russians to move forward, said that we would MOX the 34 metric tons of weapons-grade plutonium. We would turn it into mixed oxide fuel to be used in commercial reactors. It's a technology deployed in France, and that was the way forward. And to the administration's credit, we're finally moving forward. We went to the facility, myself, Senator Isakson, Senator Chambliss, a couple of years ago and finally saw the thing moving forward. It's about 60% built. Now, in the budget proposal of the president, they've stopped construction to study an alternative. There is no other alternative. If you tried to turn it into vitrified glass material, that would take more money and more time than doing MOX, and it hasn't been proven to work the way it's set up today. At the end of the day, the problems that we should be focusing on is the cost overruns of the MOX program. It's about $2 billion over cost. And I would join with the administration to sit down with a contractor and try to recoup that $2 billion to find a way forward to make it affordable. There's statutes in place that require a $100 million a year fine to be paid to the state of South Carolina if we don't meet our disposition goals. Last year, we extended that statute by 2 years because we don't want the fine money, we want the MOX program. It's good for the country, it's good for the world. And now that we've stopped to study, our fear is that we're stopping and studying an alternative that doesn't exist, that can't be cheaper than the $2 billion, the technology that there is no other way to do it. We've been studying this for about 15 years, and we'll be breaking the agreement with the Russians. Other than that, we don't have a problem with what they're doing. What we want to do is sit down with the contractor and the administration to lower cost of the program, but keep it moving forward. This administration has talked consistently about reducing nuclear proliferation and making the world safer from the use of nuclear materials. This is a program that started in the Clinton administration, Bush, now Obama, that really would accomplish that. 34 metric tons of weapons-grade plutonium, enough to make 17,000 warheads, would be taken off the market forever. A sword becomes a plowshare by making commercial-grade fuel out of it. It's a good program. We need to complete the program. And the reason we put a hold on the nominee for Secretary of Energy is to get everybody's attention. Been talking with Dennis McDonough, been talking with the administration. We hope we can resolve this, but we're here today to speak for Georgia and South Carolina. We've got to deal with the federal government. We agreed to take this 34 metric tons of weapons-grade plutonium years ago with the understanding it would leave South Carolina and not affect the environment of South Carolina and Georgia in a permanent way. And we're very DOE friendly in South Carolina and Georgia. The Savannah River Site's right on the border. There's almost as many people from Georgia working in the site there is from South Carolina. So my colleagues from Georgia have been absolutely terrific. And at the end of the day, we're going to be insistent that the federal government keep its commitment to the state of South Carolina and Georgia and to the Russians. We're going to make sure that we dispose of this weapons-grade plutonium, and we're going to be more cost-conscious about it. But we're going to let Secretary Moniz, Ernie Moniz, become Secretary of Energy here in about 40 minutes. I'm going to vote for him, but I will continue to slow down the process and make life incredibly miserable if we can't find an accommodation that I think is fair. My state, the state of Georgia, has really been a good partner with the federal government and the Department of Energy on energy issues. Several years ago, when I first became a senator, and I think it's 2002, 2003, we agreed to leave some waste in the bottom of about 50 tanks that contained high-level waste material from the Cold War era, from reactors at Savannah River Site used to make tritium to help fuel hydrogen bombs. And by leaving a small amount in the bottom of the tank, the hill, and filling it up with concrete, we're able to save $16 billion in cleanup costs. Instead of scraping it all out, sending it to Yucca Mountain, which never came about, we were able to leave a small amount in a way that not hurt the environment of South Carolina and Georgia. But now in this budget, they're reducing the tank closure by $106 million. You can't do it that way. You can't get us to help save money for the federal government and take on, I think, a reasonable risk, not much of a risk at all, then short us. I mean, people are going to stop dealing with the federal government, Republican or Democratic administrations, when it comes to nuclear materials if this is going to be the way we do business. People in Georgia and South Carolina have been very accommodating. We appreciate the Savannah River Site. It's a wonderful DOE facility. We're proud of it. We're proud of the employees, but we're not going to be taken advantage of. So here's what we're asking. We're asking for the administration to sit down with us and others who care about this to find a way to lower the cost of the MOX construction, but continue forward with the construction and get the MOX facility up and running so we can honor our commitment to the Russians and get this weapons-grade plutonium off the market. Count us in terms of lowering cost. Count us out when it comes to stopping the program in the middle, trying to find an alternative that doesn't exist. Now, as to the tanks, you're going to honor your commitment. The federal government is going to honor its commitment to the people of South Carolina and Georgia to get these tanks closed up on time and on schedule. And we have, again, saved $16 billion over the life of the close-up plan for the tanks just by being reasonable. And when it comes to MOX, there were 3 facilities planned to take the weapons-grade plutonium and turn it into a commercial-grade fuel. We're able to consolidate 2 of the facilities into 1 and save $2 billion. I'm all for saving money, but I'm also all for keeping one's word. And to our friends in the administration, we will work with you when we can, fight you when we must, but when it comes to this, I hope there will be a lot of bipartisanship for the delegations in South Carolina and Georgia to make sure that we honor the commitment entered into between the federal government and the state of South Carolina that will affect our friends in Georgia and keep this program moving. We're not asking for too much. As a matter of fact, we're insisting on you holding up your end of the bargain because we've held up our end of the bargain. And to our friends in the administration, let's see if we can solve this problem. But to my colleagues in this body, I would hope that I would have the good judgment and common sense to support you if you found yourself in this position, trying to do something good for the nation and have it get off the rail. I hope I would be willing to help you when it comes to something like this. It is very difficult to deal with these high-level waste issues, particularly weapons-grade plutonium. When you find somebody who's willing to be reasonable and helpful, the last thing you need to do is change the rules in the middle of the game. With that, I would recognize Senator Isakson and just quickly ask him, from your point of view, do you see this as a fundamental breach of the agreement we've had for years? What effect do you think it would have on our non-proliferation agenda, and how does it affect South Carolina and Georgia?
First of all, I want to thank the senator from South Carolina for his leadership on this important issue, and I'm proud to join the senior senator from Georgia, Saxby Chambliss, and in effect join Sam Nunn, who was a former United States senator from Georgia, who with Dick Lugar brought about the Nuclear Threat Initiative program, which brought about the Treaty of 2000, which calls for the reduction by 68 metric tons of nuclear material. And I would answer your question, Senator Graham, by saying this, with another question. Where else in the United States of America are there 2 states willing to accept plutonium, reprocess it into fuel rods for commercial use, and do it safely, and have dealt with nuclear materials for over 50 years? That's Georgia and South Carolina. The idea that you can fund a study to look for an alternative is laughable. That's just merely a smokescreen for the current administration's position. And the senator is exactly right. Senator Chambliss and I, Senator Scott, Senator Graham, we are happy to sit down with the administration, look at the cost overrun on the MOX facility, find ways to find savings, but the dumbest economic decision in the world would be to stop the process when you're half finished, because then you waste every dime that's already been spent, and you have to even spend more money on an alternative that does not exist. So I want to add my support to the remarks of Senator Graham and my state's support to reprocess plutonium that's weapons-grade plutonium into reprocessed materials that fuel power plants and commercial opportunities. That's a good use. That's a good way to get rid of this nuclear material, and it's also a good way to keep it out of the hands of a terrorist. Because we don't destroy it and it lays around in Russia or anywhere else, it's always suspect of being stolen or being used in a way none of us would ever want. And I thank the senator for his leadership.
I can't thank Senator Isakson. Senator Scott is with us at every step. But Johnny, you've been terrific. I just want to let everybody in Georgia know that when it comes to Savannah River Site, we've worked as a team for years, and I just can't thank you enough. And Senator Chambliss is just one of the leading national security experts in the Senate, and he's been intimately involved with the MOX program. And my question for Senator Chambliss is that we have an agreement with the Russians. They will dispose of their 34 metric tons of excess plutonium, enough to create 17,000 warheads in Russia, and we've agreed to do the same. If we are seen to stop and not honor our commitment, what do you think what reaction would the Russians have? And is it smart to delay this program in the times in which we live? Because I worry about the materials being compromised, not so much in South Carolina and Georgia, but very much in Russia. Could you please tell us your thoughts about that?
Mr. President, just like my colleague from Georgia, Senator Isakson, I want to thank Senator Graham for his leadership on this issue. He's right. We've been to the facility a number of times to examine what is going on over there, and it's great work being done by highly trained, highly educated individuals to deal with one of the most sensitive products that we have in this country. And you're exactly right, Senator Graham, that there are significant consequences from an international standpoint if the numbers in the president's budget are allowed to stand. And that's why we've had conversations with a number of individuals currently at the Department of Energy, and why we had a conversation with Dr. Moniz in preparation for his confirmation by this body. And those discussions have led to the fact that, as you say, we are willing, and we have got their agreement that they are willing to sit down with the contractor and let's talk about money. That's what the real issue is, because we're talking about a budget item and whether or not we can afford to do this. And if we don't involve the contractor, then obviously we can't get that number down to a manageable number. So again, with your leadership, we look forward to working with Dr. Moniz and others with respect to sitting down with the contractor and coming to some resolution of the ultimate budget number that's going to be needed. With respect to Russia, I mean, here we are. The president met with President Medvedev in 2010, and the two of them in a press conference talked about the MOX facility and the agreement on MOX. And here we are 3 years later with this president submitting a budget number that in effect starves his program and would have the obvious intended result of eliminating this program and thus breaking his word with President Medvedev in 2010, and also breaking the United States agreement with Russia. That has the potential to have very serious consequences on the international stage. Also, abandoning the project is going to have severe economic impacts to both the state of Georgia and the state of South Carolina because of the individuals that have been working there for now, Senator Isakson said, 50 years. It's also going to strand up to 64 metric tons of weapons-grade plutonium. And where else is it going to go? There is no place for it to go. There's no state jumping up and down saying, please bring your uranium and your plutonium to my state, and we will deal with it. You can transport it into my state. In fact, the exact opposite is happening. It was intended that we would process this, this plutonium and it will ultimately be shipped to Yucca Mountain, as Senator Graham alluded to. Now the state of Nevada is saying no. They're throwing their hands up and saying we don't want that processed material in our state because it is hazardous waste. Well, what we're saying is we're happy doing what we're doing because we've got those trained, sophisticated professionals that know how to deal with this hazardous material. They do an outstanding job of it. We have spent billions of dollars constructing the facilities to the point to where they're 40% away from being completed now. And if we just accept the president's budget, then we're going to have wasted all of that money in the construction phase of the buildings that are there, Mr. President. And also, we're not going to have anywhere to put this 64 metric tons of hazardous material, of weapons-grade plutonium. So this stands to have economic impacts to our part of the country. It stands to certainly create international issues with the Russians if we break our agreement with them. And then also, just as significantly, it leaves 64 metric tons of weapons-grade plutonium outstanding with nowhere to go with it, nowhere to store it. So the MOX project was designed to deal with a very sophisticated issue years and years and years ago, and it just makes no sense whatsoever to stop in the middle of it now and saying, well, we just don't have the money to take care of something that is as hazardous and potentially as life-threatening as what this weapons-grade plutonium is. We do need to spend our money wisely. We've got to be careful. But, Mr. President, there are agreements that we need to honor. There are certain aspects of governing that need to be done and need to be done in the right way, and this is simply one of those. So with the continued leadership of Senator Graham and Senator Isakson and Senator Scott, I look forward to us sitting down with Dr. Moniz once he is confirmed, and we're all going to vote to confirm him today because he has so much knowledge about this. One thing we failed to mention is the fact that he's the guy that negotiated the agreement. And he's the guy that the president is saying, well, we know you went through some very difficult times in negotiating this agreement with the Russians, but the heck with your agreement, the heck with all the work you did. And thank goodness his attitude is that, look, I want to work with you and we want to find a way forward on this, and we look forward to his confirmation being completed, to sitting down with he and the contractor, and let's figure out a way that we can make this project the success that is, continued success that has been thus far, and also moving forward. With that, Mr. President, I would yield back to Senator Graham.
Well, thank you, Senator Chambliss. And Senator Reed, would you like to?
Thank you, Senator. Could I request your consent to be recognized as the morning business after Senator Graham has completed his remarks?
Without objection.
And just to conclude, I want to thank both of my colleagues. You've been great partners on this issue and many others, and we've tried to be good partners with the federal government. We're proud of Savannah River Site, all that's been accomplished over the last 50 years. And as we go into a new phase of trying to get rid of Cold War materials, 34 metric tons of weapons-grade plutonium here and in Russia, 60% completion of the MOX program. As to the $2 billion overrun, that is not lost upon me as being a lot of money. That's a lot of money. But what I am telling my fellow members of the body here and the country as a whole, there is no way you can find an alternative to MOX cheaper than that $2 billion. It's just not possible. We've been studying this thing forever, and in the agreement itself with the Russians, it specifically says MOX, and it prohibits us as a nation from burying the plutonium. So this is the way forward, and I promise the members of the body and the administration, we will lower the cost overruns. I promise. But this is a complicated scientific endeavor, but we will lower the cost overruns. What we will not do is stop the program when it's 60% complete and study an alternative that has no possibility of coming about scientifically and could never lower cost and interrupt the disposition of this weapons-grade plutonium and breach the agreement with the Russians. We will not be a party to that. We'll keep talking. As to Mr. Moniz, he'll be an outstanding Secretary of Energy. We look forward to working with him, and I appreciate my colleagues coming down and joining this colloquy and putting everything on record about Savannah River Site MOX. And with that, I'll yield back and recognize Senator Reid.